The video I made on Broken Champions got quite a lot of people talking, and I enjoyed the conversations that were had. So I'd like to repeat that by going over the most gimped champions in League of Legends at the moment, or at least the ones in my opinion. Keep in mind that I don't have footage for all of these champions, so there may not be anything shown for some of them. Keep in mind that a champion being gimped does not mean the champion may be weak or may never be competitive. Some of the ones on the list may have even been competitive at some point or could simply be a top pick somewhere down the line. To repeat myself, gimped merely reflects balancing difficulties and not how strong a champion currently is. Anyways, this list is bound to be shorter since a lot of gimped champions have already been reworked and because it's usually one thing that needs to be talked about for these champions rather than their entire kit. Tryndamere should be an obvious one, and plenty of players voiced this in the broken video. The thing is, only his ultimate is truly broken, and it is probably one of the strongest and most overpowered ultimates in the game. It is so powerful that it limits what they could do with Tryndamere because they want to preserve what makes him Tryndamere. This is a problem you often see with balance. How does Riot change a champion while preserving what players like about them in the first place, or what identifies them as said character? Sometimes Riot has no choice, as it did with Sion, and sometimes Riot can be creative, such as when they reworked Master Yi. Tryndamere poses the hard problem of having one ability be so powerful that Riot simply can't make it fair without outright removing it. He must lose his identity before he's capable of being tweaked properly. His non-ultimate abilities are all rather weak and clumsy, and yes, he hits hard, but his ultimate is what allows him to edge out a lot of matchups and make a lot of stupid comebacks. Nasus is one that is sure to spark some ire from people, but I need to remind you that being gimped does not reflect a champion's viability in the meta or strength in solo queue. Nasus poses a balancing challenge because of his Q. The fact that it infinitely scales makes him a godly threat if left unchecked. Historically, Riot has wanted to remove his infinite scaling on his Q and give it a maximum cap per level in order to buff Nasus in other ways, such as giving him mobility and ways to deal with being kited. They weren't, and I'm sure still aren't, truly fond of his AFK farming style and how low impact he could be in the early game. They relented with these changes because player backlash and pulled back the changes. Admittedly, he has other ways of being effective in game, as his Wither is awesome and his Spirit Fire provides a lot of utility. It's just his Q has historically limited how Riot has balanced Nasus. Honestly, while he may be one of the most gimped champions, he's also one of the ones that ended up being the best off regardless of this. Evelyn. I don't even need to say more, do I? She's had how many changes to her kit over the years? Basically, she's gimped by her stealth. I could include other stealth champions, but most of them have been reworked into having short-term stealth, unlike Evelyn, who's the only one who has long-term stealth left. She's a Master Yi that can sneak up on you, but has even less options to approach you if you saw her coming. Her entire effectiveness is based around the fact that her stealth can actually be a factor in the game. If Riot introduced more means of dealing with stealth, such as a ward that screams when you approach it, then you'll see her effectiveness plummet. That said, her ultimate is admittedly very strong, and that ability too is what her effectiveness in game hinges on. If she can get a good ultimate, she'll do well. If she can't, she'll probably just die. Gangplank should also be an obvious one that you should have predicted. He's in line for his second rework now. His Q is what his entire balance is based off around. His ultimate isn't bad, and arguably it's pretty effective in the right circumstances. His W is overpowered, although it's a very simple ability, and his E is quite strong and really effective in the right team compositions. However, there's no semblance of synergy within his kit. His E does feed into his Q, but that's about it. Basically, Gangplank's dominance in lane relies on his Q being enough to harass an opponent off the lane and being allowed to farm in peace. If his Q destroys the enemy, then he wins. If he can't shove the enemy out, then he may have problems. Historically, whenever Riot has buffed his Q in some meaningful way, they have been forced to nerf it right back to where it was. They have buffed his other abilities and tweaked them, but he hasn't increased in effectiveness or relevancy. His Q helps him win the lane, but outside of that, he basically transforms into a walking melee bot that can't do much other than press E to buff his teammates and his ultimate to cause chaos in fights. After that, he just walks up to people and tries to cut them. Unlike other melee carries that just auto-attack, he doesn't have anything to do either than the occasional parlay. In short, Gangplank's ability to do anything revolves around how strong his Q is, and he's gimped by how his kit is basically just stat amplification other than his ultimate. It doesn't really work together all that well. This one is bound to piss off a lot of people, but in my honest opinion, Udyr is one of the game's most gimped champions. I know he has a huge fan base, so once again I have to state that gimped does not mean the champion is unusable. Riot made the decision not to give him an ultimate in order to experiment with what kind of champion creation avenue this could open up. Needless to say, they haven't tried this again, other than the transformation champions and Karma, but those are a different type of beast. Think about what ultimates do in this game. They transform the playing field. An Annie who has Tibbers will dump the bear on someone and scorch them. Twisted Fate can appear next to someone from anywhere in the map. And a Zillion can revive another player and give them a chance to continue participating in the fight. Udyr was given 4 abilities rather than an ultimate. To balance not having an ultimate, each rank of his abilities is significantly stronger than many other champions' abilities in the same rank. This presents a bad balancing situation that has been present with Udyr in many instances over the years. If Riot nerfs any ability, Udyr will simply lose the option to use it or be doomed since he has nothing really to make up for the loss of power. However, they can't buff him since the abilities are already really powerful. His skills are also all on hit abilities are basically just stat modifiers. If you compare him to other similar champions, they have a lot more playmaking options than he does. As things stand, he excels in solo queue but begins to flounder against more organized teams. Simply put, on equal grounds, he tends to do little in comparison to many others when it comes to teamfights. He does not have the power to make grand swings into the flow of a teamfight, for instance. In short, he's a very limited champion. He's a fan favorite and has an ultimate skin, so I doubt we'll be seeing any significant changes coming to him, though I doubt Riot even wants to make a change to him at this point. Even if they would, I don't personally know what they could do for him. There are other champions worth noting like Taric and Warwick, but that stuff is for another time. Remember to like the video to support the channel and to subscribe if you haven't yet. I have a few sponsors that are helping me maintain this channel, such as Loot Crate and Pro Build Systems. I have links to their websites on the description below. Use my code for a discount, and using my links also directly supports my channel.